What is up, everyone? My name is Alex, aka Doer, and you have now tuned in to Doers Take Breaks, where we invite a guest, talk all things MMA, and occasionally jump into collectibles. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Antwyn from the Making the Walk YouTube channel, where he turns casuals into regulars. Antwyn, how are you, my guy?
Doing good, man. I appreciate you inviting me on, man. This is gonna be fun.
Yes, sir. If you're not already subscribed to his channel, please do so. He's constantly posting all things MMA from predictions, hot takes, fight breakdowns, and so much more. Is there anything else you want to plug for your channel, Antwyn?
I also do a lot of video essays where we're looking at different opinions and giving my thoughts, surveying other people's thoughts, like super active in the comments, super active on Twitter, Instagram, all that. So I love to hear what people have to say, because the whole thing's supposed to be conversational and
Yes,
opinionated and
sir.
all those things. Uh, so yeah, I definitely do that as well.
I love it. I love it. So we're gonna start with what got you into MMA, but before we do that, what I thought we could do to give folks a little bit of a taste of where you are today in your opinion of MMA, I want to play a game that we're calling underrated, properly rated, or overrated. So I'm gonna give you a few names, and then
Yeah,
don't put too much thought into it. First thing that comes to mind is that fighter underrated, properly rated, or overrated. And I will say don't necessarily think of it from like where they're ranking, more just on how the MMA community tends to see this fighter as a whole. And we'll go
cool,
from there.
cool. This could be
Cool.
dangerous. This could be
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah. And then, folks, tell us which one you disagree with the most, or if there's a few that you disagree with based on Antwyn's take. We'll see.
Who knows? Who knows? We'll see.
All right. Here we go. Sean O'Malley,
Ooh, I would say properly rated. I would say
Henry
properly rated for
Cejudo,
now. Man, you got some good ones. I'm gonna say overrated.
Peter Yan,
Underrated.
Dominic Cruz,
Underrated.
Ilya Taporia,
Properly rated.
Alex Volkanovski.
Now underrated.
Max Holloway,
Underrated.
Islam Makhachev,
Overrated.
Armin Sarukian,
Overrated.
Leon Edwards,
Underrated.
Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Oh man. Underrated.
Rachmanov. I should try that better.
Underrated.
Underrated. JDM,
Underrated.
Ian Gary.
Oh man. If y'all go to my channel, you will see how I feel about Ian Gary. But I'm gonna say overrated. Immensely overrated.
All right. Sean Strickland,
I'm gonna say underrated.
Paula Casa,
Properly rated.
Kamzat Shemaev,
Another one, if y'all go to my channel, like me and Frankie, we argue about this quite a bit because we have differing opinions. But I am gonna say properly rated.
Okay. Almost done. Alex Pereira,
Properly rated.
Jamal Hill,
Underrated.
Tom Aspinall.
Underrated.
Underrated. Okay.
Yeah.
Dana White.
Underrated.
Final one. Dallas Cowboys.
Ah. Oh man, this is tough. Okay, so right now, today, I would say underrated. But most of the time, I'd probably say overrated. But
Over.
but but today, right now, as it stands, underrated for sure.
All right. Well, that gives us a good taste. All right. So now let's jump into it. What got
Yeah.
you into MMA? How long have you been a fan? How long have you been in this space for?
Man, so I have been deeply following MMA for, I'd say, how am I'd probably say maybe 15, 16 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like, so growing up, I mean, MMA wasn't really like a thing. You know, you had
Mhm.
boxing, of course, and I'm a big boxing fan. I got the Roberto Duran, shout out to him. I know he's going through a hard time, but I was always a boxing fan, always combat, always just contact.
Combat sports.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just some sort of contact. And growing up, I played football and basketball, ran track, all those things. But and those things were great. I did really well in them, but I actually had more fun like fighting, to be honest. Like
Okay.
actually fight. I got in a lot of fights, Alex. I got in a
Okay.
lot of fights.
This was middle school, high school. How early? How early are we speaking here?
We I started fighting probably when I was in kindergarten.
You were that kid, huh?
Dude, well, I'll tell you a quick story. So in kindergarten, I was coming out of the school and my dad was picking me up. And there was this kid, I mean, I'm not a big person. This kid was bigger than me and he was picking on me. And I was, walking to my dad's truck and my dad had the window down. And so I'm crying, I'm going to the truck and he locks the door.
He's like, you're not getting in here.
He was like, you got to go back and fight that dude. I was like, no, man. And so I went back and fight him, got beat up. I go back to the truck and I'm crying. He was like, hey, but at least you went back out there. And so that was my first taste of fighting. And I lost that fight. I lost another fight. Took a lot of L's until I started to, get my bearings. But it was
So you
always,
grew into your body.
yeah, it started to get fun, to be honest, just to test yourself. And I think that's what it is about combat sports is it's the ultimate test. You can do all that preparation to get to that point, but once it's said and done, you're in there by yourself. And you
Yep.
got to
Yep.
take everything that you've learned throughout your entire life, not just at camp, but your entire life into that moment to do what you're supposed to do. And so for me, I was very cheap at the time, so I watched free stuff, and
Okay.
so WEC was on for free,
Hmm.
and so watching Miguel Torres and Dominic Cruz, Donald Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Jamie Varner, um,
Yeah.
those dudes do what they were doing there, but like the ultimate person that really, really, really got me into it was Uriah Faber.
Nice.
And the reason why is I saw ironically on YouTube, a video of him talking about a situation where he was, I'm trying to remember if he was in Brazil or he was in a foreign country and he got into this massive fight and he just told the story and I was like, man, I like that kid. And that really got me into it. And so I started watching his fights and that introduced me into so many different fighters and
Yeah.
you know, the ground game. I thought that they were just, on top of each other, humping each other, but clearly it was not the case. They were trying to hurt each
Yeah.
other. And so that really got me into it and introduced me into it. And I started watching, consuming as much as I could.
Yeah.
And just the nature of it, the art of it, the chess match, that's
Mhm.
really what opened my eyes to mixed martial arts. And so from there, I actually started to write for Bleacher Report back in the day,
Nice. I'm familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, and that um, opened me up to being able to go to different shows. I started to go to Bellator shows because they would send me to go to those, and I'd write for them. And
You'd fly out to
yeah,
events as well. Okay.
yeah, it was so much fun.
How old
And
were you? Let's put an age to this.
man, so this puts me at I was early
Early
30s at
30s.
that point. Because I really, if I would have seen MMA and if it was 10 years prior to that, I would have been like, okay, I'm about to go train. I want to
Yeah.
do
About to
this.
jump into this.
But and when I in my 30s, I was smart. I was like, nah, I can't.
Hmm. Hmm.
I got kids. I can't be getting knocked out in front of my kids. So um and so I really delved into, just looking at what they do and then started looking at other people who are putting out content, the Luke Thomases, James Lynch, just a lot of different writers that were doing things and seeing what they were doing and how they were doing it and just kind of meshing all of my different worlds
Hmm.
into what I was doing. And it was a lot of fun. but I knew that the Bellator thing wasn't where I really wanted to be. I wanted to do
It was fun, but it
UFC.
wasn't necessarily your passion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it wasn't. I really wanted to do UFC stuff. I
yeah,
mean, really intently wanted to do UFC type of things. And even though I wrote pieces on the UFC, it wasn't. I wasn't in the machine to be able to go and and sit next to Kevin Iole or John
mhm,
Morgan and be like, okay, yeah, we're seeing the fights, we're gonna write this up or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
So um, fast forward that into I got had more kids, got married, and all these things, and I'm a creative at heart, so uh, I was my
Hold on to
wife.
content yet. Let's not jump on the content just
Oh
yet.
yeah, yeah, okay,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what spurred me into
into
MMA.
watching it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, into
So
being
here,
like just
there's a few
invested.
follow-up questions I have. So
Yeah,
going all the way back to the beginning, that bully situation,
yeah.
got in a few fights, took a few L's, eventually, became fun and you actually started to get a few W's. Did you ever train at all? Did you actually
No,
go and
I
train
mean,
anything or it was just
outside of the standard karate class that everybody probably takes,
yeah, yeah,
um, no, like everything that I learned was from watching it, asking a lot of questions of people who did train, and
yeah,
then trying it out in actual fights
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and seeing if it actually worked. It wasn't ever like, I'm gonna go to a school and train. Nah, like it was always somebody tells me, that's a good idea. Go try
You'll try it,
it.
yeah.
Because
And then as
the
far as
consequences are there. You if it doesn't work, you'll find out fast.
would your dad or even your parents in general be upset from all the fights you would get into? Because it sounds like your dad would always be like, "Hey, stand up for yourself if somebody's trying to mess with
um, it depends. Like it depends on like what the situation was. Like it
you." Hmm.
wasn't just what everybody says, don't start it,
Yeah,
type of
we'll
thing.
finish it.
But there were occasions where I did start it, just
Yeah,
being an asshole, really. But
yeah. I
but
mean, we all have that, that window.
yeah.
I hear you. And how many years were you doing the writing for Bleacher Report?
I wrote for them for probably 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you were doing that, what would you say? What era of cards was that for the UFC? Like what number were we on? Can you think back to
Um,
that?
let's see what number. I know during that time, that was when GSP was having his last few fights. He was fighting Carlos Condit,
Okay.
Or Johnny Hendricks.
Johnny Hendricks.
That
Yep.
Yeah, and he was about to head on out. So it was around that time. I can't remember the numbers. I know like Ariel Hawani is so good about remembering the number. I
Yeah.
can't ever remember the numbers like that. I
Yeah.
remember who the people were fighting, but I
That's
remember,
how I remember timestamps. Just who was fighting.
yeah, because
Yeah.
that card, the Johnny Hendricks against, um,
GSP.
actually, well, after that, the Johnny Hendricks against Robbie Lawler
Robbie.
card that was here in Dallas,
Hmm.
was the first fight that Sean Strickland was on, first
Oh,
card that Sean Strickland was on. He was filling in short notice against Bubba McDaniels, or something, I think is his name. But yeah, it was around that time that I was writing.
that first Hendricks Robbie Lawler fight. That's the one where it was controversial, right? Because most folks thought
Yeah.
that Lawler took it, but they gave it to Hendricks.
Yep.
Okay, and then Lawler came back to get it. I don't know if it was the immediate rematch or not, but I know that Lawler came back to get that, right?
It was, yeah, I believe that's how it went. It was a weird time because we were, right after the superstar leaves the division or leaves
Hmm.
the sport, it's always murky. I mean, we're still kind of going through that with light heavyweight. Now that Alex has kind of solidified himself there,
Yeah,
kind of. Um, we're still trying to figure out, is that going to be the guy that that really carries the torch for light heavyweight? But yeah, anytime a long-standing champ leaves, it's always weird, and
yeah,
that was during that time.
I hear you. And then, so after you do the Bleacher Report, what did you pivot into after that?
So after I did that, that's when I was still super attentive into the game, but writing, it felt kind of stagnant at that point. Um,
Hmm.
and so I actually started to focus on my music career, and so I started to do a lot of music, but I was still super invested in the primarily the UFC,
Hmm.
and seeing what they were doing, and I was and that's kind of where the creator at heart, type of thing comes from, just
Started to
being
tap in.
creative. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's lean into that. So,
Mhm.
you went from enjoying watching the sport of MMA, specifically UFC, and then you jumped into creating content for it
Yeah.
on YouTube. And you are one part of the machine, right? We know that there is Francis. I'm looking at my notes here. There's is it JC? Yeah,
Or
CJ. CJ.
CJ. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's CJ, Francis. So that's that, other folks that I look to forward to connecting with in the future as well. But tell me more about how you leaned into content, how that dynamic works, and what you're trying to do with it as well.
So, I was kind of bored in a sense. I was bored, but like I mentioned the whole music career, and I have my kids, and before that, I was touring. I was, out there quite a bit, traveling quite a bit, and for me, being a dad, being a husband is the most important thing in life, just to be elite at being those things. I want to be an elite Hall of Fame husband and dad. So that's the first thing. And so that caused me to not do as much music and things like that. So what was I going to do? Where was I going to get my creative outlet? Um,
Yeah.
and my wife CJ, she said, you when we're watching these cards, like you're breaking down the fight, you're saying what's going to happen. And she's like, and you say it before Joe Rogan and
Before
Dominic and DJ
Ariel.
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saying it before they say it. She was like, why don't you just do that? I was like, man, I don't know. That's YouTube. I don't. That's a lot of work. I think. I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. And she was like, just throw it out there. If it don't work, what's gonna happen? Nothing. So
Mhm.
and so I did, and lo and behold, people actually started watching it, which was baffling to me. And so it just kind of just spun up, and she has a lot of opinions as well. And so I was like,
Yeah,
well,
tell
why
me
don't you
about
jump
that.
on here?
That's awesome that you guys are a power couple now for MMA, right? Because she knows her stuff
Right.
too. Her
She
opinion
is.
isn't like high level. She gets into some of the details where I was just like, okay, I wonder where he found this person, and now you're telling me this is your wife. So I'm like, oh, now this
That is
makes that
that is
much
my
more
wife.
sense.
Like, truth be told, like she didn't start. She wasn't watching MMA at all, up until the Cyborg Amanda Nunes fight. And I showed her that fight, and we were still dating at the time. I showed her that fight, and she was like, "What the hell was that? That was wild." I was like, "Dude, you got to watch this shit. This is crazy."
Yeah.
You what's important about, and honestly, what would differentiates UFC, Bellator, One, uh, all these PFL, all these different organizations, is UFC does a great job of telling stories,
Yeah.
setting the viewer up by knowing what the stakes are going into this fight. Whether it's the
Mhm.
first card on or first fight on the card or the last fight on the card, a little bit about these people before the fight starts.
Yeah.
So now you're
Especially if they're on
invested.
the main card. They put the
Yes.
machine behind it. Yep.
Especially if they're on the main card, yes. And so that's what I was telling her. Like, I told her before I even played it, I was like, let me set this up for you. Let me tell you
Mhm.
who these people are and why this is so important before I press play. And that's what they do. And once she started to get invested in the stories and understanding who these people are,
Mhm.
that's when it started to really resonate with her. And that's when she really got deep into it. And I mean, I'm gonna be watching it anyway, so she might as well jump in. And next thing I know, she's pulling up UFC Fight Pass, looking at old fights. Like, I didn't know about this. I had to watch the whole fight, and so now I've got her super invested into it,
That's
and
amazing.
it just made it. I mean, we already, like, the conversations that people see on our channel. Those are just the
Mhm.
conversations that we were going to have anyway. So
Anyways.
might as well put a camera on and talk about it. So yeah, it was super easy,
Date
super
date
easy.
nights are easy to schedule. It's every major card.
Easy, easy, easy to schedule, easy.
That's funny.
So
So I for a while I was the household that would always have people come over for the main card, right? For
yeah,
UFC. That was me. Then I have my boys that do football, my boys that do basketball, but they knew like my thing was MMA. Is
yeah,
that the same for you? Is that your
yeah,
household?
For sure, for sure. I mean, and I'm a big sports person just in general. I've done my
Okay.
bracket for March Madness.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
right before we jumped on, I was listening to a podcast for the NBA. Like, if two people are having competitive tic tac toe, like, I'm watching it. That's just what it is.
I hear you.
Yeah, I'm anything that's competitive, I'm in.
How long have you
Outside
been in the
outside of
journey of
power slap.
content?
Power
Uh,
slap's
uh,
not competitive. So
ooh, ooh,
that's not competitive.
that should have been one of the overrated questions as well. Let's lean
Man,
into that. What you're just not a fan.
not at all, man. That's organized CTE. I don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because the person, they're just taking turns slapping each other. Where's the technique is, can I knock this person out with one shot? And that person has no defense. It's just all offense. There's no defense. Any game, any game of competition that has no defense is not really a game.
Mhm.
It's a toss of the coin. That's the
What
way
do
I see it.
you, I mean, so how do you, or what are your thoughts on the counter argument that I think even Dana has made, where like he says, well, these fighters, instead of having to go in there and possibly fight 15 minutes, 25 minutes, it's just, this session, they take a few hits. If they're able to knock out their opponent because they go first, they're done. And it's an early night. And they're taking, home a significant amount of money compared to what they need to do in an MMA journey to even get to the UFC, by the damage that they'll take by the time they even get to something like the UFC or another organization. So what are your thoughts on like them being able to kind of shortcut a way to be able to be financially stable?
I
Not
think
worth
that
it.
there I don't think that there's any shortcuts to greatness. And if you're going to take the risk of, getting knocked out in front of your entire family, everybody that you're going to be knocked out, and they're going to show it in perpetuity on YouTube and
Mhm.
TikTok and Instagram. At least be able to defend yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that that's ridiculous. I had my hands behind my back and
They're
a mouth
holding on
guard
to a
in,
little.
and I let a dude slap the shit out of me. Like, where's the technique in that? No, I
Yeah.
mean, no,
I have
I
to
don't like
say
it.
I love the way you started the answer, just because it's such a powerful way into your mind, and the way you think. The first thing you said was there's no shortcut to greatness. And it makes me think a lot of these a lot of these competitors, I wouldn't necessarily just categorize all of them as trying to get a shortcut to being
Mhm.
a little bit more financially well off, but you can't help but kind of lean towards that way, right?
Yeah,
Versus putting in the work to do something that you're allowed to still do a combat sport, but actually be able to defend yourself and maybe not take that damage if you take it that serious and you're willing to be, passionate and put all the grind that goes into it. So I just thought that
mhm.
response being the first thing that crosses your mind, it's a really good nugget into your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's, if you want it, you gotta work for it. Anything worth having is,
Hmm.
you have to work for it. That's just what it is. That's the way life works. And anybody that's trying to just get it in a quick grab, they're not gonna really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And not to say that those people who are winning power slap don't go through anything. They do go through something. They got slapped
hmm,
in the face.
yeah,
but but at the same time, it's just not a competitive sport. It's not a sport. It's a game
yeah.
of chance.
It really
That's
is, right?
really
Because
it.
I mean, no matter how good your chin is, it's you're exposing it out there, and after a
Hmm.
few rounds of that, after a few sessions of that, yeah, you're starting to weaken that chin, just like any other fighter in
Yep.
MMA.
Hmm.
Got
Exactly.
it, got it. And tell me, how long have you been doing content for now?
So my channel's been up for, it actually just past a year.
Nice,
I
congrats
can't, I
on
can't
the
believe it. It's
anniversary.
I honestly didn't think I was gonna make it 3 months. When I first started, I was like, nobody's going to be following this. This is not going to work. But I'll throw it out there and see what happens. And we're just a shade under 1,000 subs, and I mean, I couldn't be more happy about what has happened so far. But we have so much further to go. So much
I
further to
love it.
go.
I love it. We'll make sure that we get you past 1,000 as soon as possible. We'll aim. We'll put a target on it. When is UFC 300? What's the date of that?
April 13th, 2 days
13th.
before my birthday. My
Hey,
son's
okay,
birthday. It's actually my son's birthday too.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so that's going to be the target, and I am going to be let down if we're not able to get it there. Just based off of some of the community I have on X, formerly Twitter, and then it's just how I know some of the other folks I've connected with already and had a chance to interact with, how their communities engage as well. So we're going to try to get you there.
Yeah, man. I
Um,
appreciate it. I appreciate that.
I love it. All right, so why don't we go into the one piece you didn't mention actually before we go into your take on 300? Where does Francis come into this formula
Frankie.
of
So yes.
Frank? So why?
Um,
Okay. Well, he signs. Anyways, it's all good.
well, no, we can get into that. So
Yeah.
yes. So Francis is a person that I actually met from doing the channel. He saw one of our me and CJ's episodes,
Yeah.
and I think that either I hit him up on Twitter or he left a comment, one of the two,
Yeah.
and I went and watched pretty much all of his stuff, and he was just super funny to me. He was hilarious, and but I also noticed I was like, why don't you show your face on the channel? And he just wasn't like, he's like, I don't really do that. I say what I say and I get out of there.
Yeah.
And I I hit him up and we just had a brief chat. And I was like, man, I really want you to come on my channel, but I need you to show your face
Yeah.
because it's going to be weird. I'm going to have my face on there. Why don't you show your face? And see,
Yeah.
he was like, okay. And he was a natural. Like he jumped on there and he was a natural. And the conversation was so cool. It was so free flowing. And I was like, man, we really got to do more. And he wanted to introduce me on his channel.
Hmm.
And it just became so easy. And we just started just throwing out topics and talking about it and throwing them up. And, we've got our little community now. And
Yeah. Yeah.
as a matter of fact, we're going to do a live stream for this Amanda Hebus Rose Namajunas
Nice.
card. So like it's really expanding. So it's a beautiful partnership. I'm super thankful for Frankie. But I'm also one more person I want to bring up, and this is on the writing, but not just that, just being kind of a mentor in the space is E. Spencer Kite. He writes for a variety of outlets, but primarily he does a lot of things for the UFC directly,
Okay.
writing for UFC.com. And he's another person that really encouraged me when I first started and was really helpful. He jumped on a few episodes as well. Um, but like those two dudes like are, and James Lynch as well, but like those two dudes are like super influential in what I've done as far as content concerns, right
That's
up to this
awesome.
point. So yeah, I wouldn't be where I am up to this point without those two dudes for sure.
And so I'll get that info on the second and third person you mentioned, and we'll put it on the screen as well. And then shout out to Frankie because that's how I found you. I had been following Frankie, which his channel is Bad MMA Math, which I
Yeah.
love the name, right? Like it's just funny, and that kind of
Hmm.
speaks to some of his humor already, just in that, right? Bad MMA Math, and yeah, to see his growth as well from looking at his earlier channels. To your point, it was just a voiceover
Yeah.
to then now his face being blasted everywhere and really showing more of his personality. I think through you as well, it's been great to see how you guys have turned that into a strong partnership.
Yeah, man. It's been a blessing for sure. And now we're like actual real good friends. Uh,
Yeah,
shows you the power of YouTube for sure.
yeah, no, absolutely. All right, so UFC 300. I'm gonna pull up the main card here. We'll just have this here and wait. So I just loaded this on my phone, and I kid you not, I don't know if this is news that I just missed this morning, but is the Max Holloway Justin Gaethje fight off?
No way.
It says canceled. Canceled.
Oh
You see
yeah, it
that?
does. Yeah.
Look at that. That's the first thing that popped up when I saw it. Maybe it's wrong or outdated, but all right. Anyways, we'll figure that out, and then by the time this comes out, folks will know whether it is canceled or not. But
Hope not.
who are you taking on the Bo Nickel versus Cody fight?
I'm taking Bo Nickel by murder. Um,
Easy.
there's, I mean, this is unfortunate for Cody. Like, he shouldn't. First of all, this fight should not be on the main card. This is one of the
Yeah,
how and okay. So you
this is the
have,
machine. This is the machine just working its angle for Bo Nickel. That's what it is.
and I get it, but I feel like there's a time and place, and
And
this
it's
is
not
not the
300.
time nor the place. Um, we need legit fights on the main card. And I understand, you got those other people you want to showcase a person. To me, the showcase fight, there's two places for showcase fights. One of them being the headliner of the prelim,
Mhm.
and then there's the headliner of the early prelim. Those
Yeah,
are the two showcase fights.
yeah,
To me, and we did a video on it. Actually, ironically, it was me, Frankie, and Spencer. We
nice.
did a prediction of the UFC 300 fights before everything was announced,
Hmm.
and I put this fight because it was already announced at the time. I put it on the
Yeah,
early prelims, early prelims.
yeah, the earlier ones.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I'm okay with Bo Nickel being there. I guess I wish he was fighting somebody of more significance
yeah,
than Cody Brundage, and no shots at Cody. I just feel like this is not the card to be experimenting.
yeah,
So I was okay with that fight, but if they're gonna have it like early, you can't have a champion in Holly Holm fighting before a champion in Aljamain Sterling, a champion in Davison Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt. You
yeah.
can't have all these champions warming up the table for Bo Nickel. I don't
Yeah, I mean,
appreciate
I'm looking at some of the names on the prelim card, right? You have Yuri there, you have Sterling. I mean, how you even have Calvin there, which is Sterling's opponent, which, like that's just a name that's done enough in the sport. You
it.
have
Hmm.
Holly Holm. Who else? Diego Lopez versus Sadiq. That's fine there. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I know why it's happening, which is just it's a business move, it's an investment, it's a big risk because if that fight doesn't live up, to it's an opening card, right?
Hmm.
On the main card, then it's not gonna land well with the community.
No,
But I understand it. It doesn't bother me as much just because I understand what they're trying to do. And Bo Nickel has done a really good job of leaning into the machine that they're putting behind him. Right? He's not
hmm
shy. He's outspoken. He's confident. He's had good finishes to complement why they're backing him. So I'm okay with it, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
yeah. I mean, yes, and you're right. He's had good finishes, but he's also been fighting lesser fighters, and
Yeah,
but
without a
but
doubt.
but it's not his fault as far as who he's fighting. Is what I have an issue with is where the placement on the card,
Yeah.
not just here, but the placement on the card for who he's fighting. If he is that legit, I feel like he should have been the one that fought Joe Pyfer instead of Jack Hermanson.
Hmm.
That to me, that's a fight night headliner right there.
It's a scary
It-
fight.
it's a scary fight for both of them,
Yeah.
but it will show okay which one of these two guys is legit. And it's
Yeah.
early on in their career, so they can run that back later on once they both
That's right.
ascend, which is what is predicted. Like I feel like that's the way you do it,
Hmm.
not throw them on 300 and try to fast track it. Because did they not learn from
Darren
Page?
Till. I thought you were gonna say Darren Till.
Well, Darren Till was legit until he wasn't. But
I mean,
like,
I don't think he won that against Wonder Boy, right? Not to segue too much,
I
but
don't think so.
like,
I don't
I
think
don't, I
so
don't
either.
think he won that, and they were trying to propel him, and you saw how that went when he ran into Woodley, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you said Page. Was Page another one that they were tossing up there? I don't remember following her too much.
They when with Paige Van Zant, they were putting her in there against people that they felt like she could make her name off of. So she fought um Michelle Watterson, and she fought
Karate Hottie.
Rose Namajunas. So, and though I mean, she was competitive until they showed who they were.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, in the Paige and Michelle one was a legit fight, but more so Sage Northcutt. Like,
Oh yeah,
Like, dude,
yeah,
like he was not
yeah.
ready. But I feel and Bo is more ready than Sage, but I feel like you should walk him up. Like, don't just throw him in our faces with a lesser opponent and say, okay, like this is the next guy. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we're not. We've seen this dog and
We've
pony show
seen this
before.
story before. Yeah,
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 we're not falling for that one.
yeah. We'll see how that plays out. All right, let's move on to the next fight. Charles Oliveira versus Armin Sarukian. Who do you got here?
Um, so I have Charles, but I feel like Armin Sarukian showed us something in that Beneil Dariush fight,
Hmm.
and it was really how he can show or use his threat of the takedown to be more offensively explosive.
Yeah,
Before this, when he fought Gamrot, um, you could see some of those things. His striking is actually pretty good,
I like
but
it.
he was striking to get to the takedown. And this fight, he used his takedown to get off his striking, and he's got to do that similar thing against Charles Oliveira. Now, Charles Oliveira, on the other hand, is to me he's the most exciting lightweight champion that we've ever had. I put him up against anybody. The most exciting, not the best, but the most exciting.
I'd have to go
They
back and refresh my memory. I will say he is exciting. I don't know if he's the most exciting, but
to
well,
me, like if we're looking in the annals of lightweight history, as far as exciting champions, BJ Penn was exciting. He was, but it wasn't the most exciting because there was a lot of dominant wins. Um, Islam, he's fought against a featherweight 2 times when he's defended his belt. I mean, we'll see. Um, Frankie was very, very exciting,
yeah,
but I
all
don't think
those
it was.
Maynard fights.
Yeah, but I don't think it was to the level of excitement that Charles is, because it's not exciting in the sense of he's always doing something, where he's winning. Like that dude, he's almost losing every fight that he's in, but
I
but
say that in
somehow,
earlier episodes too, where I'm like,
yeah,
I was rooting against him, and then somehow he turns that shit around.
I don't know how he's doing it. And
Yeah.
so, with that being said, that's where I feel like his ability to turn things around when things are going bad, his ability to turn things around is what separates him in this particular fight. I think that there's going to be some adversity when it comes to Charles, and somehow he's going to turn that around, and Armin is going to learn a lesson and how to overcome adversity in this fight.
I'm
And I
looking
think
at
Charles takes it.
Charles's age because that's one big thing. Charles Oliveira age. Do
I'm
you happen to
guessing
know?
33. I'm guessing 33. Something like that.
34. Ooh,
I was close. I was
30,
close.
34. So here's I hear you. I would want Charles to win because he's not getting younger, and at that age he's starting
No,
to
he's
like
not.
this is his last run at it.
Mhm.
So I would want him to win because of that. And Armin Sarukian is so early in his career, kind of like you said, he can take an L here, and be able to come back. Similar, like if it was Bo Nickel versus Piper, right? They're both young enough in their career where they
Mhm.
can still bounce back. This is one of those things for Armin Sarukian. Like it's not a make or break here for him, but
Yeah.
him winning in dominant fashion will propel him into that conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't like that Charles is 34, and I don't like that. Most of the community would agree that he there will be adversity, and we're leaning or we're like relying on what he was able to do against DP after being hurt, what he was able to do after Justin after getting hurt, right? To be what saves him. I just
Yeah.
don't know if he can take another shot from a young gun like this and recover the way he did in those fights. So that's what scares me. I want Charles in my heart, but I think Armin, if the pressure doesn't get to him, which I don't think it will. Like just looking at how he handled the press conference,
Mhm.
I think he'll be able to perform in the moment. But that's such a hard one. It's a 50-50 there for me.
It is. It is 50-50 because what you're saying is not invalid at all. Um, I think that Armin he actually has had some adversity, but on this stage, I don't know. Charles is built for this stage. He's been here before.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that is going to flesh itself out in this particular fight. Kind of similar to what happened with Benoit Saint Denis and Dustin Poirier.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Poirier, his experience, it showed through, and I think that experience is going to help in this particular case as well.
Yeah, because Dustin was getting lit up a little bit in the beginning and having a hard
Yes.
time working with that size. But the one thing for Dustin is I don't know that we've ever seen him wobbled hurt. Like he's been hit and he'll acknowledge it, right? Or like, but never like Charles hurt. So that's why I was like, as long as I don't see that, I
Yeah,
think there's still a
that's
really good
true.
chance. And when he fights in the pocket and just starts, striking the way he does, it's dangerous for anybody that wants to try that game with him. You know.
Yeah, it's always a bad idea to go into that pocket, into the fire, and strike with Dustin Poirier. And Charles has been in there. Charles has been in there, and he survived it
He's a
and
crazy
won.
man for doing that. He's a
Yeah,
crazy
it's
man
it's
for
it's
doing that.
very rare, very rare.
Yeah.
So I think that he can
Which
do
was a
it.
more impressive fight for you, win wise? Charles versus Dustin or Charles versus Justin?
Hmm. I Man, that's a tough one. I would say I would say Charles versus Justin, only
Mhm,
because of the weight that Charles carried into that fight. Because he had missed weight ever so slightly on a messed up scale.
mhm.
Um,
I forgot
he
about that. Good
carried
memory.
yeah, he carried a bad stigma into that fight. So not only was he defending a belt that technically wasn't his anymore, he wasn't going to win a belt
Hmm. Regardless of the
either,
outcome. Yeah, yeah,
regardless of the outcome. And so he had a lot of weight on him. And so for him to come in there and perform the way that he did against a dude who's a ridiculous killer,
yeah. Hard to
a
finish.
a person that inflicts so much punishment, changes careers, ask Tony Ferguson, he changes careers. Um, and for him to get through that, he took a lot of punishment in that fight too, Charles Oliveira. To
Yeah.
get through that and come out a champion, like I'll never doubt this dude anymore. I mean, leading up to that, people were saying that he was a quitter. Justin Gaethje said that there was still
Justin was
quit left
talking
in him.
mad trash, right?
He
Yeah,
was,
Justin was
he
talking
was,
mad trash, which is why I was going to be my pick too. But for that reason, and because for Charles to finish Justin by like dropping him was
yeah.
something that I don't think I know I didn't expect for him to have
How
that
many
type of
times do
power to
you see
drop him.
Justin get dropped?
Yeah,
Dropped, one shot,
yeah.
dropped.
So
It's
I was
not
like, oh,
often, man.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
often, especially from a jujitsu guy.
that's right, that's right. All right, Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, assuming that fight is not up.
Oh man, this is so tough. Because I like both of them so much.
Mhm.
It's funny that the people at the top of the lightweight division, the affinity that I have for them, it's because that I've watched them for so long.
For so long,
Watched
yeah,
Justin, come over from the World Series of Fighting and do what he's done. Watch Dustin Poirier from Fightville back in the day, go through the WEC, go to the UFC featherweight to lightweight. Like I've seen the whole run. Saw Max Holloway come in, take a few L's from Connor and Dustin, make his run,
hmm
beat a legend twice in Jose Aldo, have his wars with Alex Volkanovski. Like I've seen the whole careers of these dudes, and to see them fighting each other is always tough to see.
yeah,
But that being said, I think that Justin, like I mentioned a second ago, he's the person that inflicts the most damage in the lightweight division.
yeah,
And but Max Holloway is the person that wears damage the best in almost any division.
yeah,
Outside maybe Cheeto. Cheeto can
mhm,
take a shot.
yeah,
But Max Holloway has length. And he is another person that when the fire is there, the hottest, he's able to do the best, and the best is blessed. Um,
good play.
so I'm gonna I'm gonna go against the grain, man. I'm gonna say Max Holloway gets it done, man. He figures out a way to get it done. He stays long and stays away from the power Justin Gaethje is a lot more patient and a lot more calculated with the way
Yeah.
that he picks his shots. If Max is able to stay away from those leg kicks, which Justin doesn't use as much as he used to,
Yeah.
um, if he's able to stay away from those leg kicks, I think that Max has the ability to get it done. He's put on some lean muscle in leading up to this, actually building up to it. He's been there before against a person who hits very hard in
Yeah.
Dustin Poirier. I think that he can get it done, man. I think he can.
How do you, when you say get it done, are you thinking some sort of finish, or do you think he gets it done, over 5 rounds?
I find it hard for him to get a finish, just because of the way that he fights. Like, but if you go back to that Dustin Poirier fight when Max moved up to
Mhm.
challenge for the interim lightweight championship, you could see he had more pop. He had more pop in his punches at
Yeah.
lightweight. And if he's, doing things a little bit differently, he has that experience now of going up to
Which he said
lightweight.
he is doing it better, right? He said he's putting that
Mhm.
weight on the proper way.
Yeah, so I think he'll have even more pop coming up, and so I think that those punches are going to start to take away from what Justin does. And Max Holloway is great at going to the body, very, very good at going to the
Yeah.
body. We talked about Calvin Cater earlier, but
Yeah.
that magnificent show that he put on against Calvin Cater, a lot of that led up to all those headshots that he was getting was setting it up with the body shots.
The early
And I think
investment.
that yep, I think that he's going to do a very similar thing here. So I think that it goes all five, and Justin and he's just overwhelmed with the volume. I think that's how it
Yeah.
goes.
I agree that if Max wins, he does it that way. I'm not happy with either person winning because the other one has to lose. It's to that point. You like both of them, and
Hmm.
there's I would say there's more what implication to Justin losing maybe because that is
Man,
his division versus Max. He can go back down and then play back in that space, right? Since
hmm
Volk is not the champ anymore, that's the only like extra thing that crosses my mind. But yeah, I wouldn't be happy to see Max lose a second time, in this division because it could also set him up to do really cool things right there.
man, check this out though. Like the Max, they're fighting for two different things. Justin is fighting for the ability to stay where he's at, to plant his flag that I am the next belt
Title
challenger.
contender. Yeah.
I have this BMF belt. That's cool, but I want the lightweight undisputed belt. That's what I want. I
Yeah.
want to stay right where I'm at. Max is fighting for options. So if Max wins, so he gets the BMF belt, right?
Hmm.
And he has a clear path to fight in Islam for
Yep.
double champ status. Would it
Hmm.
really be triple champ status? I don't know. I don't know how people are going to see it. And so he has the ability to do that. And now that opens up the more of the availability for the Ilya Taporia fight because now his star is going to explode even more. Max is already a star. This is going to
Yeah.
make his star explode even more.
Yeah.
So, and even more than that, the UFC will benefit because what if Islam, does the June fight with Dustin Poirier? And what if Dustin
Yeah.
Poirier wins? Now you got a trilogy
A
with
trilogy in
Max
there.
Holloway and Dustin Poirier. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a,
and
or
and it's
you
double belts up for grabs, right? Like, and now
double
DP
belt,
gets his
BMF, and
Woo! I love that. I love that. What a storyline.
I
Oh
mean,
my, that would be
and
exciting.
that would have been a great fight for UFC 300.
Oh my, that put butterflies in my stomach. That's a good one. That would
Yeah,
be insane because there's a lot of implications here for sure, and it's not only for these two fighters, but it does things across Ilya's division. Um, for Sean O'Malley, right? Because he still wants that fight with Ilya, but obviously
hmm
Dana doesn't want that for him, and so
yeah,
there's so many pieces that this really is going to impact in one way or another. Not necessarily right off the bat, but there's so much implication behind this one.
yeah, man. I mean, and
I
that's
don't
really
know
why
that.
I'm pulling
Yeah.
for Max.
I know that I wouldn't want Max to not win, go back to his division, and have to face Volk again. Like, while I really want him to get a W there, because I like many people thought he won the first fight,
Hmm.
and then definitely lost the third, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know that it's something that I'd be open to watch again.
No, I don't really want to see a fourth fight, especially how that third fight went. But I don't really know who Alex Volkanovski is right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You know, because we organically got here to his name, I watched a segment of yours where you spoke on Volk and you said, "Look, not a popular opinion, but I don't necessarily think he was never my favorite per se. I don't know if that's exactly how you said it, but give me your
Hmm.
thoughts on Volk. Um, and I know
Yeah.
you're a big Max Holloway fan, so that was probably one of the reasons, right? But just speak on that before we get into more of the 300 cards.
Oh man. So yeah, what I was talking about was um the fact that people call Alex Volkanovski the GOAT of the featherweight division. And yeah, I never thought he was the GOAT. I never at any point thought that he was the GOAT of the featherweight division. And a lot of people will argue, well, he beat Jose Aldo and he
Mhm.
beat Max Holloway. Cool. Okay, I understand that. Well, here's the thing about that is Jose Aldo had defended his belt like 9 times. So we're gonna wipe away all of that stuff, all of the work that he did across two organizations leading up to this. He got slept by Connor because Connor was in his head. Cool. Connor doesn't defend belts, so Connor is not in this conversation. And he- Jose gets his belt back. I mean, how can you discount all of those things? I know that Alex Volkanovski is a great. He's in my top 10 all time.
Yeah,
But
I'd go.
I don't
I
think
hear
that he's better than Jose Aldo. Over the course of their career, I do
you.
not think that he's better. I think
Well,
that
even
he's an
because the
elite
way he
fighter.
beat Aldo wasn't necessarily like a finish, right? Like
No,
it was a close fight. It was a close fight,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he edged it out. But yeah, to that point, I agree. I agree, and it hurt me when Volk won the first time. I was not a fan of him. Then it bothered me when he won the second one because I also thought I thought Holloway did really good early on, and then gave the judges a reason to make it as close as it was to then go again to Volk.
hmm
And then by the time the third one came around, like I had nothing to say because Volk didn't leave it in the
yeah,
judge's hands. Like sure he did, but he put a stamp on that. You know what I mean? Like there was
yeah,
no question about
yeah,
it.
yeah. He beat Max's ass on that one, but
Yeah,
um, I do like Volk, especially his personality outside of the cage. I really,
yeah.
really like Volk as a
That's
person,
what
as a
grew on people. That's what
yeah,
really grew on people.
that's what it was as
Yeah,
a person, as a father, as a cook. I really like Volkanovski, but if we're just looking at, just the course of their careers, stacked up, next to each other, I gotta go Jose Aldo. But I got Alex as a strong number two.
yeah. You have him ahead of Max
I do have him ahead of Max. I
just
do.
because of those W's, right? Is that
Yeah.
like the biggest reason?
Yeah. And just what he's done is, defending his titles and yeah, I think that he
Where
just edges Max.
I've never thought about it in order. I know Aldo was one, but I never thought if Volk was two or three, with Max. But I'll say that it wasn't what he did with Max that puts him at two for me. I'll say is how he looked versus that Islam in that first fight. The way he handled the
Yes.
pressure going into that,
I was
how
very impressed by that.
entertaining and beautiful it was to watch that fight. I wish we got a part two of that, but we know how that ended.
Hmm.
It is what it is. But I think that's what really made me such a huge fan of Volk at that point when he did what he did against Islam.
Yeah, that's CJ's favorite fighter is
Yeah.
Volkanovski.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Let's move on. So Whaley versus Jan. Who do you got in this?
Um, well, first of all, this is another fight that I don't believe should be on this card. Not because of
Completely
the
like on the main card or
I don't think it should be on the card at all.
interesting.
Um, the reason being is I feel like they're missing an opportunity. You got two Chinese fighters, top of the division,
All
you
right.
know, Zhang Weili is, you know, behind. I guess she's behind Alexa Grasso as the top pound for pound female fighter, which I believe she should probably be number one. And then you got Yan Xiaonan, who is very, very deserving, especially considering what she did to Jessica Andrade. And you don't put that at UFC China. Why? That doesn't even make sense to me. You got the road to China, like build it up, man. Like that's you put that over there and you challenge one for that area of the world. Challenge one.
When is
And
that? Do we have that?
the
Do
UFC
we have
China,
a do we
they
have a
said that
UFC China date?
they said no.
Okay.
And this would be why they could have had one. They could have built the whole thing around them. I know that they want to go back over there, but they have Chinese stars. I mean, we just saw one. Song Yadong is a
Yeah.
star, man.
Yeah.
Like you got
One can argue
mhm,
though that this is the launching pad for that. Because it does two things, right? Regardless of who wins, you still have a champ to be able to travel to China,
mhm.
and you're bringing, ideally, right? UFC hopes that this is going to bring different eyeballs to UFC 300 because they're the co-head. So I would say that there's probably a longer term strategy with this because they're not losing by any of these fighters, winning or losing. They're just going to take that champ and then put the machine behind it and take that road to China. That's my thinking.
It could work. It could work. For me, I'm always a strike while the iron's hot type of person.
Mhm.
And if you have this fight already and it makes sense, you already have that in the the turnstiles. You're ready to do it. Why not do it where you're supposed to do it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
build a card around it? Because we don't know if we're gonna get this 1-2 punch of two elite fighters in that division again. We don't know if that's going to happen. What if Zhang Wei Li goes out there and sparks Yan Xiaonan and she's not a deserving challenger anymore? Now what?
mhm, yeah,
So I feel like that's what they should have done, or they should have done the Alexa Grasso Zhang Wei Li fight. That'd have been even
mhm,
bigger. But
yeah,
that being said,
okay,
I think that Zhang Weili, this is another situation where experience is going to help quite a bit. Zhang Weili has been there against Joanna twice, been in there with
Rose,
Rose, like, like she's been in there with elite fighters. Not to say that Yan Xiaonan hasn't, she, like I said, she did what she did against Jessica Andrade, a former champion. And so I think that Zhang Weili knows how to handle these types of fights. She knows when to go, when to not go, when to rest, when to not rest. And I think that
yeah,
she puts a beating on Yan Xiaonan. I think that Zhang
yeah.
Wei Li wins this going away.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree. My I don't follow Yan enough to have enough knowledge to know how she can get this done other than landing something and hurting Wei Li. But
Mhm.
I think the stage is huge. Wei Li's been there, thankfully, a few times because I think early on in her career, she said that got to her, right? And she used that
Mhm.
as a reason why she couldn't perform. So I think the favorites are in Whaley's. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
Are you a betting man?
I am. And so I think that I do think it's a strong, Wei Li, Zhang Wei Li is a strong favorite, as she
Yeah,
should be.
yeah,
But that being said, I do think that Jan is going to come prepared. She's with Team Alpha Male. They've been in these spots before. They've seen, people, in their camp. They got a couple of fighters on this card, so they've seen people, go through these, you know, big fights and how
yeah,
to calm down nerves and cut weight properly and rehydrate properly and all of those things that you need to get to the fight. But they're not going to be in there with you,
yeah,
and Zhang is going to be in there with you, and that's going to be a problem.
yeah. It's that, and then the other piece is for a lot of people that are new to such a big stage. It's all the press that goes into it as well, right? That's
Lots.
draining. Imagine
Hmm.
having to do this, right? Like 19 times in one day, right? Like
It's a lot.
it's taxing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you still want to get some like light workout in to keep the body, fresh and moving. And
Hmm.
so that piece, it's hard to prepare for that for any fighter, is what I would imagine.
Yep.
And obviously experience gets you there, but that's why I have that much more. like love and support for the fighters that are able to do that and then take it up a notch and also be entertaining right before
Yeah.
the fight and put that energy because it is a lot of interviews that they're doing.
hmm A lot. It's a massive car wash that they're going through to
Yeah,
get to the fight. And if you haven't done it before, and that along with cutting weight and staying mentally sharp, like that's why I really appreciate what Sean O'Malley just did. Um, having all of that pressure, even coming out to the song, the Lupe Fiasco Superstar song, like that's you're putting a lot on yourself.
yeah.
And people like him, Israel Adesanya, you come out
Mhm.
dancing, against Robert Whitaker, and you put on that kind of show. Like people don't really understand how hard that is from a
Yeah,
mental
winning
aspect.
winning when the stakes are high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is why anytime people hear me talk about champions, I put so much weight on title defenses is because that is when the stakes are the highest.
Yeah.
And if you don't defend your belt when the stakes are the highest, or get a belt when the stakes are the highest,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to look at you the same way. That's why when I bring up Conor McGregor, I appreciate what he's done for the sport. I
Yeah.
appreciate what he's done to open things up and make it a broader sense for everyone and make it more of a mainstream thing. But when it comes to the actual in cage fighting type of things, he hasn't defended a belt
Yeah.
ever, ever.
Right.
I made the joke on our show that you could go into Connor's closet right now and grab a belt and leave. He's not going to do anything to you because he don't defend belts.
Oh, I'm gonna clip that.
So
Oh,
like
that's funny.
I put a lot of weight on that for that very reason, for what you just said, like how much pressure there is when you're going into a fight.
I love that. I love that. And while we're on the topic of Connor, have you watched Roadhouse?
I haven't watched the whole thing. I've watched it in pieces. So CJ, I went to drop off the kids. I came back and she was watching it, and I was like, "What are you doing?" I thought we were gonna watch it together. She was like, "I just fast forward to the fight scenes," and so yeah, I watched some of the fight scenes, and I will say this: if he uses that jujitsu in the cage, we might be talking about a different Connor. But I mean,
We're okay.
he really looked good, man. I, I was pleasantly surprised by how well he did. And I mean, now he's playing an amped up version of himself, but
Correct.
he
Correct.
did a great job, to be honest. Like I really, really impressed by him.
I watched it last night with my wife, and I was asking her. I was like, "What do you think it was acting like? Does it seem cringy? Does it not feel authentic?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "It feels like basically the real Connor walked into a movie set and just happened to like be in it, and not care that the cameras are on him." And for
Hmm
me, knowing Connor, yeah, it was an amplified version, but it fits him so well. How many
hmm
times you can have that type of a role, over and over. Who knows? But that's outside the point, right? Like I loved the movie. I really really enjoyed it. I wouldn't give it like a
hmm
10 out of 10, but I would give it a strong, strong 7 going to 8 maybe. And I know I
Yeah.
want to rewatch it because some scenes, the way they shot some things were new to me, and so it,
hmm
it, it almost made you feel like. Did that just glitch? Was that like a glitch punch, or like it was like the
Yeah.
camera panning? So I know that's more just the creative behind it. So I want to go back and take that in. But it was a funny way that they introduced Connor in the movie, if you recall. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, okay. So we'll leave it at
Yeah.
that, and maybe I'll put something here on the screen.
Yeah. No, I mean, but I do think that he did a good job, and there's a future in movies for him because obviously he has to pick the right role, but like Guy Ritchie type films,
Hmm.
he can totally do stuff like that.
Yeah,
Just
that guy Richie film.
any film that's going to be action oriented. He gets to say some clever quips and funny things. Like that's really who he is. You could change the character all you want, but like let him do those things. I
Yeah,
mean, Jason Statham is the same person in every movie. Why can't Connor be the same person in every
yeah,
movie? So
yeah, yeah. No, it was fun to watch him. And to put a stamp on that topic, for Connor, I would say he's a different type of goat in the sport. right?
Yes.
And it's right, and so I think that's, we've talked about that as well, where it's I just think there's different type of goats, and that's okay. It's because like he just took the sport to another level. O'Malley might find himself in that conversation, just depending on how the rest of his fighting career goes. Now he already did something that Connor didn't, which was defend the belt, right? To your point, when the stakes were
Yep.
high. So I hear you. But I still want to see some more competitive fights and see how he does in those before we get to that conversation. And you have to believe that he's going to have a career that's in the face of the public after, MMA.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we'll see what that's like.
He's carving a nice lane for himself.
Yeah.
Nice lane for himself. I was high on him coming out of the Contender Series,
Mm.
and I love to be proven right. and, and and he has proven me right all the way through. So
I love
I
it.
couldn't be more happy with Sean O'Malley.
I love it. All right. So the main card, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Who do you got here?
Oh man, this is a tough one because I don't know what state Jamal Hill is really in.
Hmm.
Every time I see him, I just saw a video on Jermaine Sterling's channel of him training for UFC 300, and he trained with Jamal Hill a little bit, and I saw him, and Jamal Hill, he still doesn't look like in shape. But that being said, that doesn't take away from his ability to throw punches, because that's what his bread and butter is his striking.
And he probably
The
doesn't want
problem
to come
is,
in as lean as he always does. Maybe, right?
yeah, yeah, and but the problem is he's fighting a Hall of Fame kickboxer. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
Alex Pereira, like he will put it on you, like. But I think the difference is with him fighting Jamal Hill, and going back to what we were talking about earlier with, overrated, properly rated, or underrated. The reason I have him underrated is because people really don't understand how hard Jamal Hill hits,
yeah,
and his ability to stay long, stay disciplined in his striking is elite. That's how he was able to beat Glover Teixeira. If you look at the Glover Teixeira fight and look at how Glover Teixeira fights with his striking, he throws a lot of hooks. And Jamal was able to beat those hooks by the basic straight
yeah,
beats curved. The quickest way from one point to another is a straight line. And so Jamal Hill is able to throw straight punches, straight kicks to keep him at arm's length. What does Alex Pereira knock people out with? Left hook. So if he's able to employ those long range weapons and keep it at length, Jamal Hill can have success in this fight. Where I worry about him is the leg kicks. Alex Pereira's leg kicks are terrible.
yeah,
Israel Adesanya, he felt every piece of that when they had their first fight in the UFC.
yeah,
So that's where I think that Alex can kind of shift the tide. But if I'm making a pick and it's really hard to make one, um, I'm going to lean towards Alex Pereira because he's been
mhm,
active. He's not coming off of an injury, and he's just been in there. I I think that Jamal Hill is going to have a really good showing, and I kind of hope he wins. But I think that Alex is just going to be too much. He's too fresh in you know activity. He's just something about your feet being on the canvas over and over again gets you so much more familiar with what you're about to see.
yeah. Well,
And
not only that, but doing it also just going through the process, the long process
mhm,
that each fight is,
yeah,
and especially for him having done that a few more times now, having to wait for everybody to fight until it's his turn, right? There's a that
mhm,
part of the process too. I think I think Jamal is definitely underrated. I went back and like I remember watching earlier fights of him and just looking at his physique and not really understanding like what he might be able to do, and then see him to get W number one, W number two, and even
mhm,
when he did lose, like I was like he just always looked a lot more impressive than people were giving him credit for. So
yeah,
what I don't like is him coming off the injury. That's the biggest thing here.
mhm,
Um, but if that doesn't play a factor, then I think it's a definitely a closer fight than I've heard most people referred to it as, because everybody's
Yeah.
just like, oh, Alex, easy. He's gonna sleep him. And I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know if it's that easy.
I don't think it's gonna be easy. I
Yeah,
really don't. And just striking with Jamal is a very dangerous game. It's a
yeah,
and he's fought explosive fighters. Him
yeah,
fighting Johnny Walker and making Johnny Walker get knocked out from the legs up. Like,
yeah. I still don't
I mean,
understand that knockdown. I don't think I still
it was
understand how
so
that works.
weird. It was like his legs went numb and he was shocked that it was happening and it just came up his body. It was so weird.
The inflatable welly man. Oh, that was bad. That
But
was
Jamal's
bad.
got that kind of power, man. And
Yeah, he cracks people hard.
yeah, Jamal,
I
I would
love it.
say Jamal hits harder than Izzy. So
Oh yeah, 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 for sure. And yeah, no, absolutely. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it. Are you gonna host that? What's the plan for UFC 300 for you?
we're definitely doing a live stream for that one, and I'm definitely having some people over.
Okay, is it gonna be
For sure.
Frankie and CJ and or just you and your
Yeah.
wife?
No, Frankie and CJ. Frankie's
Okay.
like what we're planning to do is we'll probably do a double cast. So, we might show it on both channels.
Mhm.
Just to gather as many people as possible because I know that's good. I mean, it's a massive, it's a seminal
Event.
event. So
Yeah.
everybody's going to be in and everybody's going to want to have something to say, and we're here for it. We love to have a conversation, as you can see, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
passionate about it.